text message arrived at 6:17 on a Tuesday morning. Not a good morning, not a how are you, not even a fake attempt at being polite. Just, we need to talk about the wedding expenses. Call us today. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before setting my phone face down on the kitchen counter. Some people hear from their parents every week, some every day. I could go months without hearing from mine. Unless my brother was involved, then suddenly I existed again. I already knew what the conversation was about. The wedding. Ethan's wedding. Or, more accurately, Ethan's $300,000 fantasy production that had somehow grown larger every single month. And if you think $300,000 sounds insane, you're right. The crazy part? My parents weren't rich, not even close. Yet somehow they had spent 2 years treating Ethan's wedding like a royal coronation. Every decision became bigger, more expensive, more ridiculous, a larger venue, a destination bachelor trip. Custom suits, imported flowers, a live band. Then another live band. Apparently one band wasn't enough. At some point I stopped trying to understand it. The moment I realized reality no longer applied to my family, life became much easier. The problem was that reality always comes back eventually. And when it does, somebody has to pay the bill. Usually me. I didn't call them that morning. I went to work instead. My office occupied the top floor of a renovated brick building downtown. Most people assumed I worked for someone else. I never corrected them. The assumptions were useful. People treated you differently when they thought you were ordinary. Especially family. Especially my family. By 10 o'clock, I was reviewing numbers from one of our newest contracts when my phone started vibrating again. Mum. I let it ring. Then Dad. I ignored that too. Then Mum again. 3 times in 15 minutes, which meant something had happened. Something expensive. I finally answered. Hello? The silence on the other end lasted long enough to tell me she was already angry. There you are. Good morning to you too. We've been trying to reach you. I've been working. A scoff, as if work was some strange hobby I had invented. Well, this is important. Of course it was. Everything involving Ethan was important. What happened? Another pause. Then, we're a little short. I actually laughed. A little short. The phrase sounded harmless, like somebody forgot cash for parking. How short? Mum hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. When people are embarrassed by a number, it means the number is enormous. About 70,000. I nearly dropped the phone. $70,000? We expected some deposits to clear. What deposits? That's not important. It seems very important. Her voice hardened. We're family. There it was. The family card. The emergency button. The phrase that magically appeared whenever they needed something. Funny how family never mattered when I was the one being ignored. Only when money entered the conversation. We were hoping you could help. We. Not Ethan. Not the groom. Not the man whose wedding this actually was. We. Meaning my parents. Again. I closed my office door. Why would I pay for Ethan's wedding? The silence that followed felt dangerous, as if I had broken an unspoken rule. Then Mum said something that honestly stunned me. Because you're doing better than he is. I sat down slowly. Not because of the words, because of how casually she said them. Like it was obvious. Like my success automatically belonged to everyone else. Especially Ethan. The same Ethan who had spent most of his adult life bouncing between jobs, while my parents called him finding himself. If I had done that, they would have called me irresponsible. Different standards. Always. You want me to give you $70,000. It's a loan. A loan. Of course. The magical word families use when everyone knows the money is never coming back. I'll think about it. Mum sounded relieved immediately, as if the money already existed, as if the conversation was over. She thanked me, twice, then hung up. I sat alone in my office for several minutes, and for the first time in years, memories started coming back. Not the good ones, the old ones, the ones I usually kept buried. The day Ethan crashed Dad's truck at 17. Dad bought him another vehicle. The day I accidentally dented Mum's car, I spent 6 months paying for repairs. The time Ethan failed college, twice. Mum called him overwhelmed. When I changed majors once, she told everyone I was confused and unstable. Different standards. Always. It wasn't one event. That's the thing people don't understand about favoritism. It's death by 1,000 tiny cuts. 1,000 moments teaching one child they matter more. 1,000 moments teaching another child they don't. By lunchtime, I had already decided I wasn't paying. The decision felt obvious, logical. Healthy. Then my father called, and everything became worse. He didn't start with money. That would have been too direct. Instead, he started with guilt. You know how much this wedding means to your mother. I almost laughed. There it was, the second family weapon, guilt. Used with the precision of a surgeon. You raised $70,000 for Ethan's wedding. It's complicated. No, it wasn't. They spent money they didn't have. Now reality had arrived. Dad continued. You've always been the responsible one. Translation: Ethan made another mess. Fix it. Just like always. The old script, the old roles, the golden child, and the backup plan. I ended the call 10 minutes later feeling exhausted. Not angry, not yet. Just tired. Deeply tired. Because part of me knew exactly where this was going. And that scared me. The next few days were quiet.
Too quiet. Then Saturday arrived. The engagement dinner. The first event I had agreed to attend in months. I almost didn't go. I should have trusted that instinct. The restaurant sat on the waterfront. Beautiful view. Expensive menu. The kind of place my parents couldn't actually afford anymore, which made the evening even more absurd. When I arrived, Ethan was already holding court at the centre of the table, laughing, telling stories, being adored, same as always. My parents barely noticed me, also same as always. Then, halfway through dinner, something happened. Something small. Something most people would have missed. Ethan raised his glass. "I just want to thank Mum and Dad." Everyone smiled. Everyone applauded. Then he added, "I couldn't have done any of this without their sacrifices." More applause. Then he laughed. "And thankfully, my sister finally decided to help too." The room turned towards me. I froze. For a second, I genuinely thought I'd misheard him. Then I saw the smile, the confident smile. The smile of a man who believed something was already his. My money. He was talking about my money. Before I had agreed to anything, before I had said yes, before I had made any decision at all, my parents sat there, silent, not correcting him, not surprised, just smiling, as if the matter had already been settled. My chest tightened, and suddenly I realized something. They had already told people. Not just Ethan, other people too. They had promised money that wasn't theirs. They weren't asking anymore. They were assuming, expecting, planning around it. And that realization changed everything. Because this wasn't an emergency. This wasn't a temporary problem. This was a trap. A very expensive trap. I looked around the table, at the smiling faces, at the relatives, at the future in-laws, at Ethan. And then I noticed something else, something strange. His fiancée looked nervous. Very nervous. Not happy, not excited. Nervous. Her smile kept disappearing whenever money came up. Whenever wedding expenses were mentioned. Whenever Ethan bragged about future plans. And for the first time that evening, a question appeared in my mind. What exactly was she worried about? Because whatever it was, I had a feeling I wasn't the only person being lied to. Then Ethan lifted his glass again and said the sentence that made the entire room go silent. "Honestly, if my sister wasn't so successful, we'd probably be screwed." Everyone laughed. Everyone except his fiancée. Because she wasn't laughing anymore. She was staring directly at me. And the expression on her face wasn't embarrassment. It wasn't guilt. It was fear. The kind of fear people have when they know something is about to explode. And before I could understand why, she quietly slipped a folded piece of paper into my hand beneath the table. Then she whispered 4 words.
Read it alone. I looked down at the note, then back at her. Her hands were shaking,
and suddenly I knew. The $70,000 wasn't the real problem. Not even close. Something much bigger was hiding beneath this wedding. And whatever was written on that piece of paper. Someone at this table desperately didn't want me to see it. For a few seconds, I just stared at the folded piece of paper in my hand. The conversation around the table continued. Wine glasses clinked. People laughed. Ethan was telling another story about the honeymoon. Nobody noticed anything. Except her. She wouldn't look at me anymore. She kept staring down at her plate. And suddenly I couldn't focus on anything else. I needed to know what was written on that note. I excused myself 10 minutes later and headed toward the restroom. The moment the door closed behind me, I unfolded the paper. There was only one sentence. 3 lines, written in hurried handwriting. Please don't give them any money. You don't know the truth. Ask about the loans. I read it 3 times, then a 4th. The loans? What loans? My stomach tightened. The $70,000 suddenly felt much less important. Because nobody writes a note like that over a simple budget problem. When I returned to the table, Ethan's fiancée, Rachel, still refused to meet my eyes. That alone told me enough. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And whatever it was, she was terrified. I left early that night. The next morning I called her. I honestly didn't expect her to answer, but she did, immediately, as if she had been waiting. Can we meet? I asked. A long pause, then, yes. We met at a small coffee shop 40 minutes from town, not because it was convenient, because she didn't want anyone seeing us together. That was my first clue. The second clue appeared the moment she sat down. She looked exhausted. Not wedding planning exhausted. Emotionally exhausted. Like someone carrying a secret that was getting heavier every day. For a while, she just stared into her coffee. Then she finally spoke. Your parents don't know everything. My heart sank. What don't they know? Her eyes lifted. Ethan is in debt. I frowned. How much? She laughed, a nervous laugh. The kind people make when the truth sounds ridiculous. Over $400,000. I honestly thought I misheard her. What? She nodded, again, slowly. He has personal loans, credit cards, business loans, private lenders. The coffee shop suddenly felt too quiet, too small, too warm. 400,000. Not 70. 400. I sat back, trying to process it. The wedding, the money, the panic. Everything suddenly made sense. The wedding wasn't the problem. The debt was. And the wedding had become the perfect excuse. He told my parents. She shook her head. No. Does anyone know? Another pause, then, you're the first person I've told. I stared at her. Why me? Her answer came instantly. Because you're the only person in this family who sees reality. That hurt more than I expected. Because she was right. For years, my parents had treated Ethan like he was permanently one good decision away from greatness. Every failure became someone else's fault. Every mistake became bad luck. Every disaster became temporary. Nobody ever forced him to face consequences. And now those consequences had grown into a mountain. Rachel opened her purse, then slid several papers across the table. Statements, loan documents, past due notices, collection letters. I felt sick. Not because of the numbers, because of the dates. Some debts were years old. Years. This wasn't a sudden crisis. This was a lifestyle, a pattern, a carefully hidden reality. Then Rachel said something that completely changed everything. He already planned where your money was going? I froze. What do you mean? He wasn't going to use it for the wedding. The silence between us stretched. Then she pushed forward another document. A contract for a luxury condo. My chest tightened. The down payment amount? $70,000. Exactly. The same number. The same amount my parents wanted from me. I suddenly understood. The wedding emergency wasn't real. The missing money wasn't real. The whole thing was a lie. A lie designed to get me to fund Ethan's next escape plan. I sat there staring at the contract, unable to speak. Then Rachel whispered, "He thought you would never find out." I believed her. Because honestly, I probably wouldn't have, if she hadn't warned me. I looked up. "Why are you telling me this?" Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Because she finally looked like someone carrying a burden. Not a villain, not a manipulator. Just someone trapped. "I can't marry him." The words landed heavily. "I thought I could help him." She swallowed. "I thought I could fix things." Her voice cracked. "But he lies about everything." For the next hour she told me stories. Stories nobody else knew. Hidden debts, fake investments, money borrowed from friends, money borrowed from relatives, money borrowed from people he never paid back. Every story sounded worse than the last. By the time we finished talking, I knew one thing. The wedding wasn't going to survive. Neither was the illusion. The only question was when everything would explode. I got my answer 3 weeks later, at the rehearsal dinner. The entire family was there. Parents, relatives, friends, future in-laws, everyone. The atmosphere felt tense. Rachel barely spoke. Ethan seemed unusually nervous. Then my father stood, tapped his glass, and announced something. Something that made my stomach drop. "We'd like to thank our daughter for helping make this wedding possible." Applause, smiles, pride. I looked around the room, then at my parents,
then at Ethan. They had done it again. They had already spent money they assumed was coming. Money I had never agreed to provide. Money that didn't exist. And suddenly I was done. Completely done. I stood up. The room became quiet. Very quiet. My mother smiled,
clearly expecting a grateful speech.
Instead, I asked a question. One simple question. Ethan? He looked confused. What? I held up the condo contract. The colour drained from his face. Immediately. The room went silent. What is this? Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. My father frowned. My mother looked confused. Rachel closed her eyes, as if she already knew what was coming. Ethan tried to laugh, but it sounded broken. Then I asked the second question, the one that destroyed everything. Should I explain the $400,000 in debt? The silence that followed felt endless, and for the first time in my entire life, nobody was looking at me. Everyone was looking at Ethan, the golden child, the favorite son, the family success story. And for the first time, he had nowhere left.